My name is Annie. Welcome to my channel, Eat, Drink, and Be Reading. If you saw my first video, thanks for coming back, and if not, welcome. I'm gonna do something today that I'm hoping to do fairly often on my channel, and that is book pairings. Specifically pairing a book or a selection of books with either a food or wine or beverage. And earlier this week I was cooking dinner and I was making one of our favorites, and for the first time I think that it hit me that there's things that I'm doing in this recipe, or that the recipe is doing, that I find happening in books, and so I wanted to talk about that. And so meal is Bulgogi Burgers. So Bulgogi Burgers are just a regular burger, except it's kind of marinated and mixed with more of your typical Korean seasoning. So you've got some soy sauce, you have gochujang, I have no idea if I'm saying that correctly, brown sugar, I think there's some sesame oil. I really thought a few things with this when I was thinking about what books represent Bulgogi Burgers, or I guess what like pair well with Bulgogi Burgers. And I kind of thought of two big ideas and then one that came from those. And so the first is that burgers are your classic American dish, just with the Bulgogi part, it's just kind of with a twist. And my daughter is walking into the room. Sarah, come here. You want to sit with me? You're so dirty. Yeah, you played outside all morning. Come here. Oh. Okay. Say hi. Hi. Yeah, so I was, where was I? That Bulgogi Burgers is taking your classic American dish, this burger, and adding a twist. And so for that, I thought about a Western, which I have only read one Western. So
Mommy, on the phone?
Yeah, on the phone. And it's this one, and I loved it. I read it last year, and that is Larry McMurtry's Lonesome Dove. It's probably one of the most well-known Westerns. It's won a few awards, and it's very long. I listened to it on audio, and it was like 39 hours. No, maybe 37? 37 hours long, but worth it. Highly recommend the audio. Lonesome Dove is the story of these two men, these two cowboys who had settled down for a long time. She wants a yogurt. I'll be back. Okay, sorry about that. All she wanted was a yogurt, not me. So, yeah, Lonesome Dove. So it's about these two cowboys, and they've kind of settled down. They've run this small ranch in Texas for many years at this point. And one of them decides he wants to do one last trip and move up to Montana. And they gather together a bunch of cows, they gather together a crew, and it is about their trip from Texas up to Montana. They leave, I think, a little late, and they encounter people who want to hurt them, they encounter bad weather, and they encounter fast-moving rivers, and it sounds boring, maybe, unless you're a Western lover, but it was fascinating. But what I thought was interesting, and maybe these are just my expectations, but I would have thought that the focus really would have been on the action, like these fight sequences, or yeah, how to get everybody across the river, but it was such a character study that I felt like it was this cowboy story with a twist. And it had not just focus on these two men, but on a few of the women and some of the younger boys. So yeah, it's your typical American Western with a big focus on the characters, which is probably why I loved it. The other thing I thought about though when I was making these burgers is there's this part of the recipe you're making the condiment to go on the burger, and it is literally just a mixing of mayonnaise and gochujang, which when I put it like that kind of sounds gross, but it's delicious. And I'm sitting there and I'm mixing this American condiment with this Korean condiment, like your typical American condiment with your typical Korean condiment, and then they form something new. It's not mayonnaise, it's not gochujang, it's something totally new. There's this combining of cultures in this dish. And so I thought of 2 books that I've read, and I've realized that maybe I haven't read enough of this, and it makes me want to be better about reading the experiences of people, particularly in America, who maybe have immigrant parents or grandparents, and there's these expectations that like they're trying to live up to the Americanization of maybe their friends, but they have the expectations of family from their heritage. And so I haven't read enough of that. So if you have some of those, particularly if you have any Korean American ones, please let me know in the comments. I want to read them. Maybe other people will too. But I did think of The Sun is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. It was not my favorite young adult novel that I've read, and I really like young adult. But Daniel, one of the main characters, the 2 main characters, he is Asian American, and while it's not the focus of the book, the focus is his relationship with the main girl whose name is escaping me right now because it's been several years since I read it. But I remember him, I think, loving poetry and not like just assuming he was not going to be able to like write poetry for a living because of the expectations of his parents. And that is not something that's just in immigrant families, obviously, but I think it's something we probably should talk about more and understand more, particularly living in a country where there are so many different heritages here. The other book for that, slightly different, is My Berlin Kitchen by Luisa Weiss. This is a food memoir, and it's one of the first food memoirs I read. And Luisa writes, one of her parents is German and one is American. I believe her mother is German and her father is American. She was born in Germany. They moved to America, lived in America for years, and then her parents divorced and her mom moved back to Germany. And she stayed in America with her dad. And she spent, I think, a year in Paris, and then she moved back and lived in New York for many years, and she helped edit cookbooks, and she had her own like food blog on the side, and then she moved back to Germany. There's also this like love story that I had to keep checking, like, am I reading a memoir and not fiction, because this doesn't seem real. And it was so sweet. I'll admit I have not made any of the recipes that come in it, but I thought it was so sweet. I love the way she just kind of connected food and culture, and also her trying to combine those 2 cultures, and what about her as American and what about her as German, and she talks about those things. And a big part of it is when she hits a point where she thinks she could move from New York, and where does she go? Does she stay in New York? Does she go back to Paris? Does she move to Germany? It's really a joy. Like, it's a joy of a book. So I highly recommend that one. And the last thought I had is just because there's this combining of cultures, and like it's this American dish, but there's like a little twist to it. Like, what is it? I just thought, what does home mean? What does it mean to be home? And I read a book called Keeping Place. It's a Christian nonfiction, Keeping Place Reflections on the Meaning of Home by Pollock Michel. She lives in Toronto, and writes what does home mean in a world where people move so much. We live in big cities, we don't know our neighbors, or just all of this stuff. Like, what does home mean now for the 21st century person where we're on the go and nobody stays settled? So that is excellent too, especially if you've moved around a lot or you are trying to figure out where you stand in the world. It's a really excellent, thought-provoking book. So that's all for Bulgogi Burgers. Those are my pairings. Lonesome Dove, The Sun is Also a Star, My Berlin Kitchen, and Keeping Place are all excellent books to read while you eat Bulgogi Burgers.